This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design development from a group of people with one thing in common. We love Drupal. This is episode 413, the Drupal Coffee Exchange. On today's show, we're talking about the Drupal Coffee Exchange, how it got started, and how it keeps going with our guest, AmyJune Hineline. We'll also cover the coffee module as our module of the week. A lot of coffee in this week's episode. Welcome to Talking Drupal. As we said, our guest is AmyJune Hineline. AmyJune currently works with the Linux Foundation as their certificate community architect. She is responsible for supporting the certification team's efforts to build and maintain exams and related documentation for exam products in the Linux Foundation's certification portfolio. She's also a Drupal core mentor. She has the unique privilege of being a non-code developer and has the ability to bridge the gap between the technical writers, the coders, the developers, and the designers, and connect with first-time contributors with skill sets that match their specific contribution needs. AmyJune helps communities discover how they can contribute and belong in more ways than code. AmyJune, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me back.
Always. I'm John Picozzi, Solutions Architect at EPAM, and today my co-hosts are Andy Bloom, a Senior Front-End Developer at Lullabot. And we didn't get to Andy's bio last time, so we're going to do it right now. Andy's a front-end developer and an Acquia certified front-end specialist. As a former science teacher, he loves finding simple and elegant solutions to complex problems. His passion for learning keeps him active in the Drupal issue queue and offering help in Drupal Slack channels, particularly the Twig channel. He is currently co-maintainer of the UI Kit theme and has been involved in Drupal since 2016. Welcome to the show, Andy.
Hey, thanks.
Your second week. You came back. We appreciate it.
Can't believe it's halfway over.
So to learn more about Andy, what his first career was, which I think we just spoiled, but we'll let you figure that out. Who Pete is, check out 5 Questions with Andy in episode 412's newsletter. All newsletters can be found at talkingdrupal.substack.com. And patiently waiting is our other co-host, Nick Laughlin, founder at Enlightened Development. How's it going, Nick?
Going well. Happy to be here.
All righty. Before we jump into our module of the week, we have a special offer from our friends at the Linux Foundation. They're offering Talking Drupal listeners 25% off any e-learning course, certification exam, or bundle. Good from August 22nd to September 30th, 2023, with discount code LFDrupal25. Please note, bootcamps, ILTs, and FinOps courses are excluded. Again, that code is LFDrupal25, and you can use that at training.linuxfoundation.org. We'd like to thank the Linux Foundation for their support. All right, let's bring in our module of the week guru, Martin Anderson Klutz, a senior solutions engineer at Acquia and a maintainer of a number of Drupal modules of his own. Martin, what do you have for us this week?
Thanks, John. Have you ever wanted to quickly search your Drupal admin UI for the specific page you need to get to? There's a module for that. It's called the Coffee module, and it was originally created in November of 2011 and was actually covered as module of the week on this podcast all the way back in episode number 45. It has versions available as 8.x-1.3, which works with Drupal 9 and 10, and it also has a 7.x-2.3 version. It has 53 issues open, only 13 of which are bugs against the 8.x branch, and it does have test coverage. The site is currently in use by almost 31,000 Drupal sites, and the maintainer is Michael Mole, who appears to have created the module in his first year on Drupal.org, now almost 13 years ago. So the module works with a simple keystroke to sort of invoke that search interface, allowing you to immediately start your search. You can start typing, and it will provide suggestions as soon as you start typing in the first letters of where you're trying to get to. You can use the arrow keys to move between different suggestions to sort of quickly select between different suggestions that it provides. Now, listeners who have used Mac apps like Alfred or Spotlight will be familiar with, the experience as being pretty similar to that. And it just ends up being a really fast and simple way to move between different places in your Drupal admin interface. It also has a kind of a shortcut command, :add, is a quick way to add content of a specific type. And it additionally provides a hook that you can use to define your own commands as well. Also note there is a Coffee Extras module that you can use to add even more commands, but it doesn't work with Drupal 10 and is officially marked as no longer developed. As a final note, I will point out that the Gin admin theme comes with its own sort of built-in optimization and formatting for Coffee, so you can enjoy Gin and Coffee together. So let's talk about the Coffee module.
I don't suggest you enjoy gin and coffee at the same time, except when using Drupal. That's just me. I love the coffee module. I think I use it on every site I build. That's all I got. Coffee for the win.
Personally, it's not what I don't know why either, because I typically do like shortcuts, but it's just one that I've never it's never caught on for me. I don't have any objections to it particularly. Like if I'm working on a project with John, for example, I have no problem with somebody adding it. But if it's a project only I'm working on, it's it's one of the modules that I remove just because I don't personally use it. And it's an easy module to remove because it doesn't affect anything else, right? So I kind of like how it's really self-contained, and if it's helpful for some people, it works. But personally, I just kind of use the admin toolbar.
I will say I did not realize you could do the :add and add content that way. That's super spiffy.
Okay. Yeah.
What do you got?
No, I was gonna say learning about that
All right.
might be worth checking it out though.
A game changer. Does that work for like taxonomy too, or is it just content types? Do we know?
The project page says content types, but yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe somebody can
open a new
that.
feature request. Yeah.
I know. I feel like if I could : and add taxonomy, like, oh man, that would be.
Yeah, I have a feeling that actually might have been one of the things that was in Coffee Extras. So, maybe the mention here will inspire somebody to jump in and take over that and bring it up to date.
Awesome.
Pretty cool.
All right.
Just to really extend on the coffee thing here, it does everything it does because of great JavaScript.
Wow. Andy, thank you for that dad joke. We appreciate that, and you are keeping the dad jokes strong. Listen, there's going to be a lot of talk about coffee, and as you can tell from my intro, I've had a couple of cups of coffee already today, so we're doing just fine. Yeah, coffee is a great helper module. I think that I think that everybody should use it, but it might not be for everybody. Anyway, Martin, thanks as always for a very topical and very useful module of the week. All right, let's jump into our primary highly caffeinated topic. Actually, before we do that, AmyJune, you haven't been on for a couple of months. I'd love to hear what's new with you. I think there might be a new job, maybe.
Yeah, so there's a story. I was working at opensource.com before, and y'all had me on here talking about, how to contribute to opensource.com. So I want to do a little bit of follow-up on that, is that opensource.com doesn't exist anymore as a contribution website. It still exists that you can find your articles. But for people who have some articles that they'd like to publish, the community of authors that I worked with are trying to work with the OSI on getting opensource.net, which hasn't happened yet, but there'll be an opensource.net happening soon. But in the meantime, there's a website from my colleague Jim Hall called Technically We Write. So if you have some articles about Drupal, because Drupal is a platform for getting out words, Technically We Write is accepting articles. I just wanted to follow up and let people know that there's a place now that opensource.com is dissolved, because Red Hat doesn't really care about open source. But that's a whole different episode that we can talk about. In the meantime, I did get a job at the Linux Foundation, which is kind of cool. So I'm still able to work on emerging technologies and that kind of thing. And my job is very niche over there. It's very similar to what I did at opensource.com, is that I wrangle subject matter experts, and I don't actually do the writing of the certs and the exams, but I help other people write the certifications and the exams. So I work with, right now I'm working with the FinOps people and Argo, and we're creating some new certs that are going to come out. And I just help get them into the platforms, help them do some technical writing, help them stay on target for what their goals are for when the exam comes out. And I really like this job in this particular moment in time, because I don't know about y'all, but a lot of my friends in tech are getting laid off, and the job market is super, super stiff. And the Linux Foundation is a nonprofit, so I don't feel bad advertising for them. These certifications and the exams, the barrier to cost is lower than most exams. And they do a lot of associate level exams. So people first getting into IT, first getting into Kubernetes. So it's a chance for people to like take an exam or take a training class that's relatively low cost and have it on their resume. So I feel very privileged in this tight job market to help accelerate, the exam processes for these emerging technologies.
That sounds very cool. And I think I always see on LinkedIn various other folks in various other industries like, oh, I just got this cert and that cert. And I think, I don't know, I think certifications are kind of the way to go, especially we could also have a whole nother show about, 4-year college degrees and tech, but I think, certs are great. And it sounds like fun gigs. So
yeah. And
that's super awesome.
And when in that super tight job market right now, they're asking for 4-year college or equivalents. And some of those certs can definitely like replace that 4 years equivalent. So I think that makes it really useful for people that did not find college or university their preferred way of learning, right? So I think it evens the playing field a little bit with the certs. Yeah. Thanks for asking me about my job.
Absolutely.
No problem. Now let's get on to coffee though. Can you start with giving a brief overview of what the Drupal Coffee Exchange is?
Sure. So real high level, the Coffee Exchange is exchanging coffee. It's a networking device where people can get together and not talk about tech at Drupal events, but we can talk about something we love, which might be coffee. There is a quarterly mail exchange, and we can talk about that later. And then there's the actual in-person Drupal Coffee Exchange that happens at regional events or at DrupalCon. But it's really about exchanging beans.
How did the Coffee Exchange get started? How long has it been around? Who started it?
Okay, so I did not start it. My friend and colleague and coworker in the past, Adam Nerdstein, he started it back in. Okay, so I know we started the Slack instance in 2018, but I think we were doing it ahead of that a little bit. So Adam is the inception, when we started with the quarterly exchange. And it was all about, Adam has this really unique way of wanting to build community relationships, and him being a project, like an administrator level or whatever he does, he does a lot of different things over the years. He understands that not everyone connects in the same way. So it sort of like really brings together people that wouldn't normally have a conversation at events, or maybe they don't get to events. And so you have this coffee exchange where you meet someone and then maybe you exchange with them again. So it's really just starting conversations with people. And he's really good at that.
So the first one was mail only?
Yeah, we started with mail only, and then the very first Drupal BOF, Birds of a Feather, was at Drupal Camp, New Jersey in 2019.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I think you just kind of segued into my next question, which is how do you participate? So you highlighted a little bit there. We can start with how you participate live, like IRL, right? But then I'd also like to hear more about the mail exchange option, how you participate in that.
I want to go back a little bit to the inception process. That I want to credit Anna Kulata for designing all of our logos and that sort of thing when we first started. So I don't want to let anybody out of any of the highlights. But the quarterly mail exchange, we have a channel in Drupal Slack, and I'm just going to double check it real quick before I say it. It's Drupal-Exchange, and you join the channel, and then there's instructions in the channel, I think in the bookmarks up at the top, about how to fill out a form and submit your name, your address, your choice of beans, choice of style of cut beans. And then it goes into a spreadsheet, and then Laura Gates organizes the mail exchange. So it's all private though. And then as the quarter happens, she posts and says, "Oh, quarter one exchange is happening. Let me know if you want to participate." And she'll send out an email, and she'll match people. So she matches people based on maybe locality, because some people are in Europe, and some people in North America maybe don't have the funds to do the shipping to Europe. Or she makes sure that maybe they haven't been matched before, and she gives them all the details. So there's a relative level of privacy. You only share the address with the people who you're exchanging with, so I don't want people to worry that your addresses are floating around somewhere on the internet. And then as far as a live coffee exchange, there's a little bit more work involved with that, just because we have to coordinate with camps. We do have the privilege of having a relationship with DrupalCon North America, that we are one of those lucky few who do submit the BOF, and it gets automatically accepted before general BOF submissions go out, because it is a popular BOF. So we do have a guaranteed slot at DrupalCons for our Drupal Coffee Exchange. And then as far as like the camp level goes, it really depends on like coordinating with the camp if they want to have a coffee exchange, coordinating with some of the past participants if they're willing to help moderate that Drupal Coffee Exchange, because for those that don't know this before, I had the privilege of having a community job before where I went to almost every single Drupal event. So it was really convenient to have the Drupal Coffee Exchange because I was at all of the events and was able to coordinate that. Now that I don't have that privilege, it's been a little bit harder to maintain those relationships with camps, especially if they hadn't had an exchange before, because we've only started in 2019. But there is some coordination that goes along with having it at a Drupal event. But that's just on the organization level. On the participation level, having a BOF, it's pretty straightforward. You show up, you have a bag of beans, someone else has a bag of beans, you put all your bags of beans in the middle, and you come with a bag and you leave with a bag. So pretty straightforward.
So when you're doing it live, then I imagine a lot of it is, like you said, just kind of community building, kind of chatting, having a topic other than tech. But what are the mechanics of the actual exchange? Is it like Yankee swap style where everybody picks a number and whoever has the lowest number goes first? And
I don't know what Yankee swap means, so I can't address that.
Oh, okay. So some of our listeners may not know either. So maybe it's a New England thing, but Yankee swap is there's a couple variations depending on the family, but my preferred method is it's generally a Christmas thing. You set like a base level price for a gift, like $5, $10, whatever, $20. Everybody brings a gift. You choose numbers 1 through however many people there are. Number 1 gets up, picks a gift, opens it, sits down. Number 2 picks it up, opens their gift, and they can choose to take number 1's gift or keep it. And you just go through, and then at the very end, whoever had number 1 gets to pick which gift they want to keep. Maybe it goes by other names in other locations.
So
I have a question.
The white elephant. in my neck of the woods.
Okay, Andy, what do they call it in your neck of the woods?
Typically white elephant, but I feel like that carries several different rule possibilities.
Yeah, there's variations, and you have to do rule setting.
There's wrong variations and correct variations.
Oh
but
boy,
by the
we
way-
found another topic for Nick to go off on.
No,
This Mac and Linux, and anyway,
but yeah, I was wondering if you do something similar with the Coffee Exchange, or if it's a little bit more.
So we do it different every time, and just to make, especially for people who are repeat offenders that come, right? So we try to find like really just off the wall ways of who goes first, who's the furthest away, who traveled the furthest, who's the closest, who has more Drupal commits, you know what I mean? And so, and I always, I crowdsource it too, and people who have been there before, who are seasoned, may have already been thinking about it ahead of time. Like, how are we going to make the decision? But generally we don't do the swap thing afterward.
Okay.
Generally, like, we just, when it's our turn, well, what happens is, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead of the questions, because I actually am not a good guest and did not look at the questions. But when you first get to the BOF and you meet people, one of the things is you introduce your coffee, and you introduce yourself, say an interesting fact, and then you introduce your coffee and you say some things about it, and then you put it in the middle. And then when it's time to choose, people will choose. And then the only time there's any switching is if the bag left is from the person who's the last to choose.
Okay. Which probably is pretty rare, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's more common than you think, which
really?
I don't know why. I would think it would be more rare than it is. But yeah, generally that's the only people that really switch, is that person that's stuck with their own bag. We don't want people to go home with their own bag.
How many people show up at the DrupalCon Coffee Exchanges?
DrupalCon Coffee Exchange. Our first one was in Seattle, so I just want to mention that, which was kind of a great place to have it, right? Of all the places. And that was the most spectacular coffee exchange we've had at a DrupalCon. Well, we've only had 3 because of the pandemic, but someone came in with like apparatus to brew coffee, and like everyone had their little cups of coffee and stuff like that. So that was pretty nice. And I would say there was a good 25 people at that coffee exchange. Camps, of course, the attendance is a little bit smaller because maybe people don't know about it, or usually it's because, darn it, I forgot my bag of coffee. That's generally what we hear more than anything else at that local regional camp. And Florida camp this year, we had like 9 people. Asheville, we had 5 people. Sometimes, it just really depends on that camp and communication, and if they've heard about it before. Generally, if we've had the coffee exchange at a camp previously, we get more the next time because people felt left out that first time, like, oh, I want to do that. So, and then if I can get the organizers on the beginning of camp to say, oh, we have a Drupal Coffee Exchange Saturday afternoon, that also increases participation, because people are aware that something like that's happening.
So then if everybody's bringing in their bag of coffee and putting it on a table, and you're going around in some predetermined manner, how do I make sure that I go home as somebody who doesn't have a way to grind beans? How do I make sure that I get ground coffee? What are the rules as far as making sure everybody goes home with coffee that they are able to enjoy?
So we don't have a rule for that. My idea is inclusivity, is that not everyone likes ground coffee. And this is purely opinion based, but we know me, I have opinions and you can differ, but it's more inclusive to bring whole bean, because people can grind the beans, because you can go to Trader Joe's and you can grind your beans. They won't care if you go in with your own bag, just don't be like, hey, I'm bringing my own bag of beans, just go in there and use their little grinder. But we do have people bring ground beans, like if that's their coffee of preference, they don't think to bring whole beans. There's no rules. We're all kind of loosey-goosey. But for me, I always think that whole bean is a little bit more inclusive, like I said, because like if I get a bag of ground, I don't know what to do with it. Like, what do I do with this? Like,
how do you make your coffee? What do you do with beans?
I grind them.
So then the beans are ground, are they not?
But they're ground to
Well,
my specific needs.
it's
Yeah.
also a
So
freshness. It's
Yeah,
also a
it's a
freshness
freshness
thing
thing.
because
Yeah.
once you grind the beans, they kind of like, I don't want to say
Lose
they
it.
have a shelf life, but they
Yeah.
kind of lose their flavor and potency as they're sitting around ground. So
Yeah.
like this is actually we
Y-
should have gone around the
Yeah.
room before we started to see who's a coffee drinker, because Nick,
What's your machine? And yeah.
I don't actually know if you drink coffee.
So, you do know that you've been to my house and had
Oh my
coffee with
God,
me
you're right.
before.
I have. I've had
So,
coffee at your house. I know you drink coffee. Never mind.
so this is a bit of an aside, but I think it's an appropriate one. So to answer your question, and it's a good question, Andy, because our listeners, if you have it, our listeners probably have it too. If you have, for example, we have an espresso machine. We have a Breville Barista Express machine, and it has a hopper on it that you can grind right before you brew. The thing is, you have to, if you're using a fresh ground coffee, it builds pressure differently than if you use a pre-ground coffee. And in fact, you have to have different tools for that machine. Now, most machines come with both, but you have to use a different type of tool to brew coffee that's pre-ground, just because it dries out, the oils don't come out as much, it's not as fresh. But it is a barrier to like if people are just used to pour over or Chemexes or something like that, and you have to have it ground, and you don't have a grinder, yeah, it's a barrier to entry. But your coffee will be fresher if you grind it. And AmyJune alluded to it, but to make it more explicit, the amount of variability to the type of grind that you have is enormous, both size, compaction. Like there's
They're
coffee.
also
Coffee is its own world. There's a lot of variability.
there are also
So
machines that, so for example, like my spin actually grinds the coffee differently depending on what type of drink I'm making with it. So like if
Exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
doing an Americano, it'll do it one way versus, just a regular drip coffee, something like that. What were you going to say, Andy?
you all are so fancy. I have like a $20 Black & Decker drip coffee maker, and I come from a long line of people that probably don't appreciate coffee. I heard
Oh,
a story about my grandfather recently, who would make a full pot of coffee on Monday, pour what he wanted, let it go cool. Tuesday would turn the hot plate back on. Wednesday would turn the hot plate back on. Thursday, Friday, and would have one pot of coffee for the week.
That is,
So-
so I'm not a coffee snob, but that is horrendous.
So I will take that coffee. I used to, when I had like a pot coffee maker, I would make like 20 cups, or like a full pot, 12 cups, I guess, in a day. And whatever was left over, I would put in a thing in the refrigerator for iced coffee. Right. I would not,
That's
very
acceptable,
rare,
I think.
very rarely did I pour it into a cup, put it in the microwave, and reheat it the next day. Very rarely.
But at
I will
least the
say,
microwave
oh,
does
go
it
ahead.
quick, and it's not that hot pad
Yeah. Oh yeah.
heating it up over an hour. Yeah.
Although Grandpa was probably wired by the end of the week. He was probably like ready to go. Like, let's go.
just chewing tar. Yeah. So the idea of it being more inclusive to bring beans is not something I had considered, mainly because I know I don't have a way to grind beans. And you said you can go to Trader Joe's, but like I am minimum an hour from Trader Joe's. So if I were to get beans, where would I look to go get my beans ground?
Safeway? I mean, you can always go.
Never heard of it.
I don't know.
Any super,
you might have to
usually,
buy a
Any
grinder.
grocery store has a grinder.
Yeah.
yeah,
But also there's this place called the Goodwill. It might have different names and different things, but you can get one for like $3 a coffee.
Like a thrift store?
Yeah.
Salvation Army store. Yeah. Yep. Thrift store.
Yep.
For those audio
But
listeners,
I want to clarify.
Andy's getting assaulted by his curtains right now.
I want to clarify. That's for the in-person exchange. For the quarterly exchange where we mail it, people will specify if they want ground or whole beans, and then they'll specify if they want dark roast or light roast. You know what I mean? And so the quarterly exchange is a little bit different. The mail exchange is a lot different than the in-person exchange. The in-person exchange is like, all things go, right? But we try to we don't want people to go away with we have a story later, I assume, in the show about a bad bag of coffee that floats around. But we don't want people to get a bag of decaf if they don't like decaf. But we also don't want them to get caffeinated if they want decaf. So that quarterly exchange, you can like hone in your preferences a little bit more than the person.
I was going to just go on a tirade about decaf, but AmyJune raises a good point about inclusivity as well, because some people love coffee but don't love the caffeine. So that makes sense.
Some people can't drink caffeine. And I just want to point out one more thing, kind of based on Andy's comment about drip coffee. There's, that's perfectly fine, but I also want to mention there's a big difference between drip coffee and like an espresso machine that you may not realize if you've never had one of those bigger espresso machines. And that is one of the really nice things about drip coffee machines is you get consistency, right? It might not be the best coffee in the world, right? But it's drinkable. Like you really can't, unless you really, really mess up the ratio of water to grinds, you can't make a bad cup of coffee with a drip coffee unless you reheat it 5 days in a row. But that's a separate issue. But you would think if you get a nicer espresso machine, like you're guaranteed to get a good cup of coffee every time. It's push button. Like it's a skill, right? Baristas is a skilled trade, I guess you would say. Like it takes skill to make sure that you're brewing something properly, because the thing with an espresso machine like that is the variability increases. The good coffee is significantly better, but the bad coffee is significantly worse as well. Like when we first got this machine, my wife and I didn't understand like what grind ratios meant and all that stuff and fresh coffee. The worst cup of coffee I've ever had in my life was that first cup of coffee. But now, now that we know how to use it, it's more my wife than I. She's the one that's a fan of coffee making. Each cup of coffee that we make there is, better than coffee you get at, Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts or anything like that. But it takes, every time we get a new bag, it takes a couple cups to figure out what the grind needs to be for that specific bag. Whereas drip coffee or ground coffee, like you grind it, you put it in the filter, you put some water in, you're going to have a decent cup of coffee no matter what. So if people are listening and want to just jump into espressos, I guess it's a word of caution. It takes a little bit of effort. I personally think it's worth the effort once you figure it out. But it's not one of those things where you generally like get the coffee, grind it, push a button, and you're gonna have the best coffee in your life. It takes it's a hobby. It takes a little bit of effort to figure out the ropes.
Yeah, coffee is I appreciate actually the science, and maybe Andy, as a former science teacher, you might appreciate the science behind coffee as well.
I'm sure I would do it.
Nick takes it to a different level. I'm more like, hey, I want to push a couple buttons and I want to make like a drink or have a double shot like right off the bat. I'm looking for the quick and easy.
As a Mac user, I want a drip machine, and as Nick is a Linux user, he wants to tinker with his own distribution of coffee.
Andy, let's not light the fire, okay? Let's just leave it alone, all right? AmyJune, I want to touch on. I originally was going to ask, like, does this only happen at DrupalCon? But you already kind of answered that. It happens at camps. It happens at DrupalCon. As it happens quarterly by mail. This question comes from Steven via our Talking Drupal Slack. I'm wondering, as a camp organizer as well, and Steven and Nick and I all co-organize the same camp. So, how do I get a Drupal Coffee Exchange added to my camp?
So by added, you mean like we help with like the social media and put it in our channel and stuff like that, is what I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Just asking me or asking Laura or posting in that Drupal Coffee Exchange Slack channel, Coffee Exchange channel. That's it. Really.
Oh, that's easy.
I think
super easy.
What's hard on my side is I would like it at every Drupal event. And so I reach out to some organizers and I'm like, hey, what about this Drupal Coffee Exchange? But if I'm not attending the camp, maybe they think it's a little bit hard to facilitate on their own. And that's where the challenge comes in, is like me wanting it at a camp I don't go to. Or I write ahead to a camp and be like, hey, I do this thing and it's networking, and they never get back to me. And then it doesn't happen because there was no advertisement on their part, right? There's advertisement on my part, but only two people come. So there's a little bit of a challenge, but on an organizer point of view, super straightforward. You just, get a hold of me or Laura and we make it happen. Both of us have the keys to the kingdom. And then, we'll help you with the slide. We'll help you with, our social media through X, I think it's called now. And I think we're on Mastodon too, but
no, it's officially called X, formerly known as Twitter.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I dropped it when they did the X, but I still have the Coffee Exchange on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want one, we can make it happen. It's more when I want one at a camp and it hasn't happened before. That's where the challenge comes in.
Okay. Well, I don't know if you plan on coming to the New England Drupal camp in November, but I would love to have a coffee exchange there.
You've had a couple coffee exchanges. You've had one in person in 2019, and there is a picture of you holding what we're going to talk about later. I don't know if you participated in the Drupal coffee exchange
I didn't, because my first participation was actually at this past DrupalCon, but
okay.
I do remember
we'll talk about your participation level in a minute. When we're talking about DrupalCon.
Inclusion. We want to be inclusive.
We had a Drupal coffee exchange during the shelter in place too, where we all got together and made coffee on our own, and we had like a little boff about it. Remember that? At New England.
I do remember.
Yeah, before camp started, we all had coffee together in Zoom. But yes, we would love to help you do that. We can help make that happen.
Stephen in our Slack is suggesting maybe we also start a craft beer exchange, Drupal craft beer exchange. So community, take that idea and run with it. Go. All right.
So moving on to some of the past exchanges, AmyJune, what's the favorite coffee that you've exchanged? And I mean, that you've given.
Okay. So for the repeat offenders who come to the Drupal Coffee Exchange, most of them know that I bring the same kind of coffee a lot, but a different variety of it. I live in Central California, Northern California. So not everyone knows that we have this thing called missions, where there's these missions where they kind of did a lot to the Native Americans and stuff like that. And we're trying to remedy that. But I live by the San Juan Bautista mission, and there's a coffee company there called Verve. And Verve Coffee, with every bag of coffee, donates to the Ohlone Indians who are part of that mission. And so I like to buy mission-driven coffee. And we have some other people like Avi Schwab. He's always bringing mission-driven coffee too. But Verve Coffee is my favorite because it's always good. I've never had a bag back. Well, except like there was one that was like Ethiopian bitter, which I don't like, so I don't buy that one. But that's my favorite coffee to bring. And that's one of those stories like I was telling you about before. When we come, we introduce our bag of coffee. I tell the little mission-driven story about it, educate people about missions. And that's what I generally bring. But at the last Drupal Coffee Exchange, without giving any details, I got a bag of coffee from John that I really liked a lot. And so I bought a second bag and I took that to Asheville because I liked that bag of coffee so much.
That's awesome.
There's a story, and we'll probably tell that, but I don't want to give away any spoilers right now.
So I do want to actually talk about favorite coffees and exchanges because, as I said, my first Drupal Coffee Exchange happened in Pittsburgh at DrupalCon. It was lovely. AmyJune was there, and she actually brought a coffee from the Equator Coffee Company.
Oh yeah, from San Francisco. Yep.
Holy moly, I got home and I made that coffee and it was amazing. So amazing that I actually went to their website and bought 3 or 4 more bags of coffee, and have ordered a couple more since then. And it literally turned me on to like a whole new thing. And so it's very fun. And the Equator Coffee, we dropped the link in the show notes. We'll also have the link to the coffee that AmyJune just mentioned as well, in case anybody's interested.
I forgot about that mission. That coffee has like a cat on it. I was at a conference with Carrie Fisher and April Sides, and it was right before DrupalCon. I'm like, oh, I'm going to get a bag of coffee here. And they had a little mission story too, but I can't remember what it is. Something about like maybe the women who roast their beans or something like that. So yeah, great stuff. Thanks for reminding me about that.
Oh, no problem. It's super good coffee. I highly recommend.
So what is your favorite coffee that you've received at an exchange? Is it the one that you got from John?
I think so. I'm one of those that don't hold on to a lot of valuable details in my mind. But most recently, that's been my favorite bag of coffee. But I also got to choose it myself, and that has something to do with the story involved. Maybe we should tell the story.
Yeah. So we've hinted at that story enough now. So what is the story? What happened at your first exchange, John?
Oh,
what did you do?
We're gonna ask AmyJune to tell her funny story.
Okay.
Because that's the next question.
That isn't the same story, though.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is the same. It is the same story.
No, my most funny story has to do with Brian Perry.
Oh, okay. Well, geez, then all right. AmyJune, why don't you? So as I've said, right? I took part in the first.
In quotes.
Sorry, I just assumed your funniest story was about me. That was so poor, such poor judgment on my part. So anyway. First coffee exchange, DrupalCon, Pittsburgh. I'll set the scene, and then I'll turn it over to AmyJune to finish the story. I really wanted to take part in the Drupal Coffee Exchange, but came to DrupalCon woefully unprepared. So, AmyJune, how did I remedy the situation?
He had an IOU.
John showed up to the coffee exchange without coffee. Is that what you're saying?
I did. So
not ground or unground. Wait, at least he didn't take the instant coffee packet from the hotel room to exchange.
No, I didn't.
He shows up with a jar of coffee crystals.
He took a free bag from GovCon's booth. They were giving out little bags of coffee.
Oh no!
And he took one of those, and he had an IOU for his local company, and it was like a gift certificate, basically. But yeah, John showed up with an IOU.
I put my business card on it with a like, hey, email me if you get this, and I will send you. It was a.
So what did you send?
It was a gift card to Dave's Coffee, which is a local Rhode Island roaster, family-owned business, and they roast coffee, a couple different varieties, flavors. It's awesome. I'm actually, it's funny. As we started recording, I got my email from them that said, hey, we just roasted and delivered your bag of the month. So they have a kind of a bag of the month program where you can sign up and they'll send you a bag of their roaster's choice. So whatever the roaster feels is the pick of the month, they will send you a bag of it, which is great because you get to try a whole bunch of different coffees.
Yeah, that's actually a good tip. You can look for when we first got this machine, we were looking for fresh coffee and thought we'd have no chance. And it looks like a lot of, as long as you're somewhere near a metropolitan area, there's probably several roasters near you. Worcester's got 4 or 5 in the area. So if you're looking for a coffee to bring that's fresh, look for a local roaster. Do you have any other tips besides show up with coffee to the coffee exchange, John?
Yeah. So, let me preface that story. I can't. I guess I have to addendamize the. I just made up a word there. The story. Like, I was getting ready for DrupalCon. I gotten on the plane. I was like, no time to get coffee, and that was the best solution I could come up with. Yes, bring coffee to the coffee exchange. Make time for it. I think the reason that I didn't participate, because I was at Drupal Camp Florida, and like I was like, oh, coffee exchange, and then there was a session that I wanted to go to, or something else was going on, so I didn't really prioritize it. But it was really just a fun way for somebody who loves coffee to kind of like meet other Drupal community members that love coffee, and to get exposure to different types of coffee. I mean, there were, I don't know, 3, 4, maybe even 5 different types of coffee there where I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, oh, that sounds lovely. Oh, like I'd really like to try that.
At Florida Camp, someone brought their own roast too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the next level after you get your own machine and start grinding. You start roasting your own.
Yeah, so I've had friends and family members who have done that, and that's always interesting too. But I think like just overall, like the Drupal Coffee Exchange is just a great way to to network and meet people and chat about something that's not Drupal, right? And something that's equally unifying. So yeah, I recommend it. Definitely bring a bag of coffee. You can put that in your luggage.
And we've had folks that have done what you've done and like, oh, crud, I didn't bring my coffee. But then they'll go to like a local place where the camp is and pick up a bag instead of stealing off the GovCon table.
Yeah.
But
And putting, I mean, at least I didn't try to pass off GovCon's coffee as like, this is my, because it was a mini bag of coffee. It wasn't even like a full, like, here, I'm going to be the lame guy that comes in. And
that would have been probably funny too. But any other stories from past coffee exchanges?
so
AmyJune?
I don't know if the listeners know that there's a list of questions and I just looked at them. I'm going to, okay. So my most funny story has to do with another funny story. So I'm going to go off the script a little bit.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
does someone
go
want
for
to
it.
ask me the next question?
Oh, sure. Andy, you're
AmyJune,
up.
what is the brick of shame and where is it now?
Okay, so I'm in a hotel room and I totally forgot. It's on my desk. So the brick of shame, and I have it on my iPad. So I know that people will not be seeing this unless they watch the video. And I'm really sorry, but I'll describe it. We have this guy here. I don't know if you can see who that is, but that's Michael Herschel from the Drupal
Yeah.
community. He doesn't really do anything in Drupal that's important, but in that's a joke. But in Asheville in 2019, he decides it would be funny that his coffee that he's going to bring is a brick
Folgers.
of vacuum packed Folgers coffee.
Now, folks,
And we're
if
like,
you're listening,
decaf.
if you're listening,
I see nothing wrong with this.
rewind the show about 10 15 minutes to the part where we talked about grinding beans and that sort of thing, and just know that Folgers vacuum packed crystals are just
they're not okay.
okay.
It's not okay. But anyway, hilarious. And we decide, Adam was there at this particular Asheville 2019 Drupal Coffee Exchange. We somehow decided to name this thing the Brick of Shame. And we made rules about it. We're like, well, this is going to be something that the person who goes to the next Drupal camp, who has the next Drupal Coffee Exchange, has to take with them. So as you can see, holding up this picture of Mike Herschel later, there's stickers from all the Drupal camps, like a suitcase where you put the stickers on for the locations. So the person who goes to the next Drupal camp gets stuck with this brick of shame. Now, it's not instead of a good bag of coffee, it's in addition to the coffee. So you're not stuck with just the Folgers brick of shame. It's an addition,
Yeah.
So there's some funny stories that come with this brick of shame. And back when I had more privilege and we're traveling to more of the Drupal camps, Kevin Toole was also traveling to a lot of the Drupal camps because of the Drupal recording initiative. And every once in a while, he would get the bag and then I would get the bag. And then every blue moon, someone else would get the bag. But me and Kevin have both been searched at TSA because of this brick being in our luggage. So that's one funny story. Another funny story.
That's why I suggest putting it into your checked bag, because you will absolutely get searched when you.
Like, why the heck, unless you're smuggling something, do you have a bag of Folgers decaf ground coffee with you? Exactly.
There it is.
So he was stopped in London. So he's in like an international airport, stuck undoing his suitcase and doing this. I've been stuck twice in Newark undoing my suitcase. But with that story of the next person who goes to the next Drupal camp takes the bag with them, or goes to the next Drupal Coffee Exchange, Brian Perry at DrupalCon Portland said, "Ooh, I'll be the tribute because I'm going to go to Drupal Camp Asheville." Well, he didn't come to Drupal Camp Asheville and he broke the rules. There's a lot of shame involved, but he did this really funny video where he did like this sort of, I don't know what it's called, but where he passed, we showed the video in Asheville where he passed the bag to someone
Okay.
else through the internet, and April had the bag and I didn't know that was happening. And there is a website, I don't know if it's up, and I come ill prepared, I should have that website, but I'll drop that to you so you can put it in the show notes. But so he was able to exchange it like kind of virtually, and pass it off to someone. And then the other story that I love is that John shows up with an IOU in 4 years of having the Drupal Coffee Exchange. Like, the IOU is pretty hilarious. But the Brick of Shame is with me right now. And because I'm going to the next coffee exchange, which I'm hoping is going to be St. Louis camp, because that's coming up. So
I was actually just going to ask when the next exchange was, but you just answered that.
I'm hoping it's that. But there's other camps coming up that I'm not going to. I think this year I'm only going to Twin Cities and then DrupalCon Europe after that. But if someone else wants to take that Brick of Shame, they're welcome to it, because I had it the whole pandemic. And actually, there's another funny picture I'm going to show. And again, apologies to the listeners at home that are just listening, is we did a whole social media campaign about the Brick of Shame, doing PSA messages about masking. So there's the Brick of Shame with mask, where the other coffee is really offended. And like, we always joke that they did social distancing before it was cool. So it's got a lot of character, this Brick of Shame.
Where can we find the schedule of coffee exchanges? Like, if we're not going to be in St. Louis, how do we find out what the next one is? Is the Slack channel the best way?
The Slack channel, or they have a X, formerly known as Twitter account. And let me look at that so I don't give you the wrong information too. It is Drupal Coffee is their account name. So you can follow Drupal Coffee, and they'll do like slides and stuff like that. Well, that will say when the next thing is coming up.
So, AmyJune, I don't think we talked about this, and forgive me if I didn't hear it, but what's your favorite type of coffee?
Coffee that someone else makes for me.
Ha! I see.
I like Americanos, but I like dark, not bitter roasts of coffee. So when I do the quarterly exchange, it's dark, smooth blends. Whole bean is what I like.
I just got
finding medium and light roast is so hard too.
Yeah, so I just got an Italian roast that's probably on my doorstep, or will be on my doorstep very soon, which I'm excited about. I do enjoy the darker roasts. It's interesting because I only started doing like I don't know, craft coffee, if you will, or like ordering from smaller coffee roasters, like just like probably about a year ago. Before that, I was like, brace yourselves, I know this is going to be bad. Like I would just go get like a 5-pound bag of like Starbucks beans and like just work through those. But I don't know. It's just it's a literally a life-changing experience to just adventure through kind of the world of coffee.
I also want to mention something about sustainability when it comes to coffee.
Go for it.
I know it's a privilege because it's expensive, but if we all try to get like shade grown organic coffee, that's good for the environment too, because lots of the coffee places will tear down what's there to put coffee, but really the good roasts are shade grown, and there's no like demolition of the ground to grow the shade grown coffee. And if it's organic, we've got the soil issues and stuff like that. So just to kind of plug sustainable coffee too. It's always nice to get that organic shade grown coffee.
Now you say shade grown, but not necessarily dried, right? Does that
Right. Well, it's grown under a canopy of something else typically.
Yeah.
And that's the way coffee was traditionally grown, that's the way, like, because the sun kind of dries it out and like it makes the growing process, everything like that, like where you harden something it grows better when it's grown under the shade. You know what I mean? It doesn't, I don't know the science behind it because I'm just a backyard gardener. But when you take that away, now you have the sun beating on the ground, taking out nutrients, that kind of thing. And when you have that canopy, you get the natural fall, the deciduous trees, you've got natural fertilizer and humus and all that kind of stuff. But that's a gardening episode and not a coffee exchange episode. But also like that, just the stripping of the land is what's real bad.
Right.
So
interesting. Before we come to our final question, I just noticed that Andy, for those listeners not, again, listening and not watching, Andy's wearing a C hat, and I'm assuming that's C for coffee, right, Andy?
Yes.
Yeah. Good. Great. Good answer. Good answer.
Wait, what is that C really for?
It's for the Cleveland Guardians, the baseball team.
You got a question? Go for it.
Yeah. So earlier in the episode, we were talking about the mail exchange, and you talked about dividing the participants up between Europe and America, but we haven't talked about any in-person stuff in Europe. So should I expect to see this at DrupalCon Lille?
Yes, that actually Laura reached out to me recently and asked if she should submit a BOF, and I told her yes. So we had a really informal one last year because we didn't advertise it and that kind of stuff. I think there was maybe 4 of us at this very informal one in Prague, but I would like to have it be a bigger thing in Europe. Again, it comes down to that, like, communication with the organizers. Do they want to put on, because it does take some facilitation from them, some commitment, especially if someone who's not been, like, anyone can organize a Drupal BOF or Drupal Coffee Exchange BOF. Like, if you wanted to do one in New England and just need our support for social media, great. You know what I mean? But anyone can take that on and help organize that. It's not specific to me or Adam or Laura. It's just, we just do it the most, right? It's a community endeavor.
Okay. So. I actually just realized something, that you said Kevin got stopped in London with the brick of shame. You guys are committing like international incidences, bringing that thing around to other countries. What are you thinking? I hope the French authorities just stop you at the border and go, no, we're going to have to confiscate this. That's not allowed.
That was here. Kevin. I did not take the brick of shame international because there was this, I don't want to go into too many details. There was a lull period where it was lost. And we didn't know if we were going to get it back, but that's naming names and doing things that I shouldn't do.
Yeah.
But there was a lull where we didn't know where the brick of shame was. So
are you bringing it to France with you?
If I have it in my possession, I might not be the one who has it in my possession.
There you go.
But if I do, yes. And I will be creating an international incident.
There you go.
Is there anything you'd like to add before we close out the show about coffee, selecting coffee, or the exchange itself?
I think it's a really good community model for networking. And like John said, suggesting like, a craft brew club or, teas of Drupal. I think it's a really good model for that kind of different sort of networking. And I think that's my favorite part about it is it's not about the coffee, it's about the meeting of the people and having those stories to tell. I mean, we've had great stories to tell, you know what I mean? But yeah, I really would like to see it be a community model for networking for other sort of things, because it's hard when you're at DrupalCon. Maybe you don't know anybody, but if you go to the coffee BOF and you have a bag of coffee, you're going to meet, especially at DrupalCon, 10 to 15 to 20 people. And that's 10 to 15, 20 people that you'll see at the after party. That's 2 people you'll see at Bad Camp next year. That's 1 person you'll see at Ned Camp. You know what I mean? So it's really about that bringing people together over the coffee part of it. Coffee's just a bonus.
Any plans to bring this into the WordPress community maybe while you're there at WordCamp DC? No. Okay. Well, that's fair.
I don't do enough with the WordPress community. I talked about it a little bit this morning in the hallway with people because they're like, oh, what are you doing right now? I'm like, oh, I'm going to record a podcast about the Drupal Coffee Exchange. They're like, ooh. So they're welcome to like emulate it, but I don't go to enough events to facilitate that. And then,
there you go.
Like I said, it's a good project to kind of, copy and like distribute. Yeah.
Make your own sort of thing.
Mhm.
I will
Hey,
add in, I just looked at TSA.gov and they do allow coffee beans or ground in both carry-on and checked luggage.
But
we didn't say they didn't allow
they
it,
didn't
but
allow it.
if you
They
want to
just
get
question
the
it.
plastic glove treatment, you just put that in your carry on and see what happens. Okay.
They question like why? And then it's so dense. That's what kicks it
Yeah,
off.
it true.
It's like
Or like,
vacuum
what's in the
packed.
middle of
Well,
this? Because it's definitely
The
not
the
actually
scanner can't
filled.
see through it.
well, and
Yeah.
I imagine the vacuum packed bag, it's probably like foil lined.
Yep.
Yeah.
All of those things. Yep. So it brings up questions.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, I think AmyJune maybe alluded to this earlier, but smugglers use coffee to hide illegal items when they're illegally trafficking them. That's what the concern is. Anyway, AmyJune, as always, it was a pleasure having you. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for the great work that you're doing at the
Thank you.
Linux Foundation.
Thank you.
And for our listeners, do you have questions or feedback? You can reach out to Talking Drupal on X, formerly known as Twitter, with the handle Talking Drupal, by email with show@talkingdrupal.com. And you can connect with the host and other listeners on the Drupal Slack in the Talking Drupal channel.
And again, as a reminder, our friends at the Linux Foundation are offering Talking Drupal listeners 25% off any e-learning course, certification, exam, or bundle. This offer is good from August 22nd to September 30th, 2023, with the discount code LFDrupal25. Please note, boot camps, ILTs, and FinOps courses are excluded. Again, the code is LFDrupal25, and you can use that at training.linuxfoundation.org.
And I
Thank you
do
to
want to,
the
sorry.
Linux Foundation for their support. Go ahead, AmyJune.
Okay. I do want to mention it's case specific, but that'll be in the show notes.
It will
I
be in
was
the
gonna,
show
I was
notes.
gonna say.
I'll drop it in right here for anybody listening. It's capital L, capital F, capital D, lowercase RUPAL 25. There you go. All right. You, dear listener, can promote your Drupal community event on Talking Drupal. Learn more at talkingdrupal.com/TD promo.
And you can get the Talking Drupal newsletter for show news, upcoming Drupal camps, local meetups, and much more. Sign up for the newsletter at talkingdrupal.com/newsletter.
And thank you, patrons, for supporting Talking Drupal. Your support is greatly appreciated. You can learn more about becoming a patron at talkingdrupal.com and choosing that button in the sidebar that says Become a Patron. All right, everyone, we've made it to the end of our show. AmyJune, if folks wanted to get a hold of you to talk about coffee or the Linux Foundation, how can they do it?
I am on Mastodon in the Drupal community under Volkswagen Chick.
There you go. Andy, what about you?
You can find me at andy-bloom.com, and all of my links are in the header of that website.
There you go. Nick Laughlin.
You can find me at Nixvan, NICXVAN, pretty much everywhere.
And I'm John Picozzi. You can find me at John Picozzi on all the major social networks, Mastodon, and Drupal.org. And you can find out more about EPAM at EPAM.com.
This has been Talking Drupal, and if you've enjoyed listening, we've enjoyed talking. See you guys next week.
Dun, 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 dun. I feel like we need like some sort of bulletin music there.